Princess Zara stood at the tall window of her tower room, watching the purple and gold lights of the nebula dance across the dark sky. Tomorrow would change her life forever, and she was not happy about it. The young Valorian woman had spent her 25 years hoping she could choose her own path. But royal blood came with heavy duties. The Valorian Empire stretched across hundreds of star systems, each world more beautiful than the last. Their people were tall and elegant, with silver skin that gleamed in starlight and eyes that changed color with their emotions. Zara's eyes were currently a deep blue, showing her sadness and worry. She touched the cool glass of the window with her long fingers. Beyond the palace walls, the capital city of Valoris Prime sparkled with a million lights. Flying vehicles moved between the crystal towers like silver fish, swimming through an underwater forest. This was her home, her people, her responsibility. But tonight, none of it brought her comfort. "Your Highness," came a soft voice behind her. Zara turned to see Mira, her personal attendant since childhood. The older woman carried a silver tray with steaming tea. "You should eat something. Tomorrow will be a long day." Zara accepted the cup but did not drink. "Tell me again why this marriage must happen, Mira. Help me understand how giving up my freedom will save our people." Mira set down the tray and joined Zara at the window. She had served the royal family for 40 years and understood the weight of duty better than most. "The Void Swarm grows stronger every day, my lady. They have consumed 12 star systems in the past year alone. Our military leaders say we cannot stop them alone." The Void Swarm was the nightmare that haunted every civilized species in the galaxy. They were creatures of pure hunger, traveling from system to system and eating everything in their path. Planets, stars, even space itself seemed to disappear when they passed through. No one knew where they came from or what they truly wanted. "But why must I marry a complete stranger?" Zara asked. "Surely there are other ways to make alliances." "Emperor Caney believes this marriage will show our commitment to the new alliance," Mira explained gently. "The humans have agreed to help us fight the Void Swarm, but they want proof that we see them as equals, not just useful tools." Humans. Zara had heard strange stories about this new species that appeared from the outer rim of the galaxy just 2 years ago. They came in ships that looked crude compared to Valorian technology. But somehow these primitive vessels had defeated Void Swarm attacks that destroyed much more advanced fleets. The military reports made no sense to her. How could a species that had barely learned to travel between stars fight monsters that had terrified the galaxy for centuries? Some Valorian nobles whispered that humans were lucky fools who would soon be eaten like all the others. But the battle recordings told a different story. Where other species used careful tactics and overwhelming force, humans did things that seemed impossible. They flew their ships in ways that should have torn them apart. They fought when any reasonable being would surrender. Most strange of all, they somehow turned desperate last stands into brilliant victories. "What do we know about the one I must marry?" Zara asked. Mira consulted a datapad. "His name is Ben Rivera. He is 28 years old and serves as a diplomatic officer for the human fleet. His family comes from a place called Earth, which appears to be their homeworld. Beyond that, the information is limited." Zara imagined what this Ben Rivera might look like. Would he be covered in scales like the draconian merchants? Perhaps he had tentacles like the Aquatic Council representatives. The galaxy was full of strange and wonderful forms of life, but she had never seen a human in person. "The worst part," she said quietly, "is that he probably does not want this marriage any more than I do. We are both being sacrificed for politics." The door chimed and both women turned. Emperor Caney entered the room, his tall frame filling the doorway. Even in his private moments, he carried himself with the dignity of someone who ruled hundreds of worlds. His silver skin showed the fine lines of age and responsibility. "Father," Zara said, offering a small bow. "My daughter," he replied, moving to stand beside her at the window. "I know this is difficult for you. It is difficult for me as well. Then why must it happen?" Emperor Caney was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of terrible knowledge. "Because in 6 months, our best military analysts believe the Void Swarm will reach the core worlds of our empire. Without human help, we will fall. With their help, we might survive. And if this human refuses the marriage, then the alliance becomes much weaker and millions of our people may die." He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I would not ask this of you if there was any other way. Zara looked out at the beautiful city below. Somewhere out there, families were sleeping peacefully, trusting that their emperor would protect them from the horrors lurking in deep space. She thought of the children playing in the crystal gardens, the artists creating beautiful works in the floating studios, the scientists working to unlock the secrets of the universe. All of it could be gone in months if the Void Swarm continued its advance. "I will do my duty, Father," she said finally. "But I pray that this human is at least kind." Emperor Caney squeezed her shoulder. "From what I have learned about their species, kindness seems to be one of their strongest traits. Perhaps this marriage will surprise us both." As her father left the room, Zara continued to stare out at the nebula. Tomorrow she would meet her future husband and begin a new chapter of her life. She could only hope that when morning came, she would find the strength to smile and make the best of an impossible situation. The stars offered no answers, but they reminded her that even in the darkest night, light could still shine through. The Great Hall of Valoris had never looked more magnificent. Crystal pillars reached toward a ceiling painted with scenes from ancient Valorian history, while holographic flowers bloomed and faded in endless cycles along the walls. Representatives from 40 different species filled the massive space, each delegation wearing their finest ceremonial clothing. Princess Zara walked slowly down the center aisle, her silver wedding gown flowing behind her like liquid starlight. The dress had been worn by Valorian princesses for 1,000 years, and its embedded gems caught the light from overhead chandeliers, making her appear to glow from within. But despite the beauty around her, Zara felt empty inside. Each step brought her closer to a future she had not chosen, a life bound to someone she had never met. The faces of the wedding guests blurred together as she focused on simply moving forward without stumbling. Her heart beat faster as she approached the altar, where two figures waited. One was High Priest Valen, an ancient Valorian whose silver skin had turned almost white with age. The other figure had his back turned toward her, and she could see only that he wore a simple dark blue uniform, rather than the elaborate robes she expected. This must be Ben Rivera, her future husband. As Zara reached the final steps before the altar, the human turned around to face her. She stopped walking so suddenly that she nearly lost her balance. Ben Rivera was nothing like what she had imagined. His skin was a warm brown color, darker than the pale silver of her people, with eyes that reminded her of rich earth after rain. His hair was black and cut short, and when he smiled at her, she saw white teeth and small lines around his eyes that spoke of someone who laughed often. He was not as tall as the Valorian nobles, but he stood straight and calm, showing no fear despite being surrounded by powerful aliens. But what surprised Zara most was the genuine kindness in his expression. Where she expected to see political calculation or resigned duty, she saw only gentle understanding. "Princess Zara," Ben said softly as she approached. His voice carried a slight accent that made the common galactic language sound musical. "You look nervous. Would you like to hear something funny about my species before we begin?" Zara blinked in surprise. No one had ever spoken to her so casually during a formal ceremony. "I suppose so," she replied, not knowing what else to say. "Humans have a tradition where the groom is not supposed to see the bride before the wedding ceremony," Ben explained with a small smile. "It is supposed to bring good luck, but since we are from different worlds and this is being broadcast across the galaxy, I think that rule might not apply today." Despite everything, Zara found herself smiling back. "Perhaps we should make our own traditions." High Priest Valen cleared his throat loudly, reminding them that hundreds of important guests were watching. The ceremony began with ancient Valorian words that spoke of duty, honor, and the binding of two lives for the good of their people. As the priest spoke, Zara stole glances at Ben. He listened respectfully to every word, even though the ceremony was conducted in Old Valorian that he probably did not understand completely. When young children from the palace staff approached to offer flower petals, Ben knelt down to their level and thanked each one personally, making them giggle despite the formal setting. During the exchange of ceremonial gifts, Ben presented Zara with a small wooden carving. "This is from Earth," he explained quietly. "It is made from a tree that grew in my family's garden. My grandmother carved it herself before I left home." Zara examined the carving carefully. It showed two figures standing together under a sky full of stars, their hands almost touching. The workmanship was simple but beautiful, created with love rather than expensive materials. It is lovely, she said, meaning it. But surely this has great personal value to you. It does, Ben agreed. Grandmother said it should go to someone who would appreciate that even simple things can be precious when they are made with care. As Zara handed Ben her ceremonial gift, a crystal pendant that had belonged to Valorian royalty for centuries, she noticed how he examined it with the same careful attention he had given the palace children. He did not seem impressed by its obvious value, but rather interested in the craftsmanship and history it represented. The ceremony continued with traditional vows spoken in both languages. When it came time for Ben to speak, he did not simply read the prepared words. Instead, he looked directly into Zara's eyes. "Princess Zara," he said clearly, "I know this marriage began as a political necessity, but I promise you that I will work every day to earn your respect and friendship. You deserve to be treated as an equal partner, not as a prize to be won or a duty to be endured." The Valorian nobles shifted uncomfortably at these words. In their culture, wives traditionally promised obedience to their husbands, not the other way around. But Zara felt something warm spread through her chest as she realized that Ben truly meant what he said. When she spoke her own vows, Zara found herself changing the ancient words slightly. Instead of promising blind obedience, she spoke of partnership and mutual respect. High Priest Valen looked shocked, but he could not stop the ceremony now with so many important witnesses present. As the priest pronounced them married, Ben offered Zara his arm rather than simply taking hers. It was a small gesture, but it showed that he saw her as someone with her own choices to make. The great hall erupted in cheers and music as the ceremony concluded. Representatives from dozens of worlds offered congratulations in their various languages, creating a beautiful chaos of sound and color. But Zara barely noticed the celebration around them. She was too busy wondering how a marriage she had dreaded could suddenly feel like the beginning of something hopeful. The royal gardens of Valoris Prime had been designed over centuries to showcase the most beautiful plants from across the galaxy. Crystal trees from the ice worlds grew next to fire flowers from volcanic planets, all carefully tended to create living art that changed with the seasons. Princess Zara walked the winding paths with her new husband Ben, still getting used to the idea that she was now married. 3 days had passed since their wedding, and she was beginning to understand that humans were far more complex than anyone had realized. On Earth, Ben said as they stopped beside a fountain carved from blue stone, "We have gardens too, but they are different from this. We let wild plants grow alongside the ones we choose, creating what we call organized chaos." Zara tilted her head, confused. "How can chaos be organized?" Ben smiled, an expression she was learning to enjoy. "That is very human thinking. We believe that the most beautiful things often come from mixing planning with surprise. Like jazz music, where musicians follow basic rules but create something new every time they play." They continued walking, and Zara noticed how Ben greeted every palace worker they passed. He had somehow learned the names of gardeners, cleaners, and guards, asking about their families and listening to their answers with genuine interest. When they encountered Lord Vex, one of the highest-ranking Valorian nobles, the contrast became clear. Lord Vex barely acknowledged the servants as they bowed to him, but he stopped to speak with Ben and Zara. "Prince Ben," Lord Vex said, using the title somewhat mockingly, "I trust you are learning to appreciate Valorian culture." "I am learning something new every day," Ben replied pleasantly. "For example, I discovered that your people have been writing poetry for over 3,000 years. On Earth, we have been doing the same thing, but our poems are very different. Would you like to hear one sometime?" Lord Vex looked surprised. "You mean humans create art?" "Oh yes," Ben said with enthusiasm. "We create music, paintings, sculptures, stories, dances. Actually, we probably spend too much time on art instead of more practical things. But we believe that beauty is just as important as technology." As they walked away from the confused noble, Zara asked, "Why did you not take offense when he spoke to you that way?" "Because he was not trying to be cruel," Ben explained. "He genuinely believes that humans are primitive, which means he has never learned about what we can do." Getting angry would not teach him anything useful. That evening, Ben showed Zara a collection of human art and music he had brought from Earth. She watched recordings of humans creating beautiful paintings with nothing but colored liquids and brushes, building structures that touched the sky using only metal and stone, and making music that could bring tears to her eyes. "This is impossible," she said after watching a recording of human dancers seeming to fly through the air. "How do they move like that?" "Practice," Ben said simply. "Humans believe that with enough practice and determination, almost anything is possible. We have a saying, the only limits are the ones we accept." But what truly amazed Zara came the next day during a meeting with the Valorian Council. Ben had been invited to share human perspectives on military strategy, and Zara was allowed to attend as his wife. The council chamber was a circular room where the most powerful nobles in the empire made decisions that affected billions of lives. Each member sat in a chair that floated above the floor, showing their rank through height and position. General Thane, the head of Valorian military forces, presented the current situation. "The Void Swarm has taken another system in the Outer Rim. Our battle analysis shows they are following expected patterns, which means they will reach the middle colonies within 4 months. We should evacuate the outer worlds and consolidate our forces around the core systems," suggested Admiral Cora. "It is the only logical strategy." Ben raised his hand politely. "May I ask a question?" General Thane looked annoyed but nodded. "Speak." "Has anyone considered what the Void Swarm might be trying to accomplish?" Ben asked. "I mean, why do they consume everything instead of just taking what they need?" "Because they are monsters," Admiral Cora said firmly. "They exist only to destroy." "But what if they are not trying to destroy?" Ben continued. "What if they are trying to solve a problem and consuming matter is their solution? If we could understand their actual goal, we might find a way to give them what they need without fighting." The room fell silent. Zara looked around at the shocked faces of the council members. In 1,000 years of Valorian history, no one had ever suggested trying to understand their enemies instead of simply defeating them. "You suggest we negotiate with creatures that have eaten entire star systems?" General Thane asked incredulously. "I suggest we consider all possibilities," Ben replied calmly. "On Earth, we learned that our worst enemies sometimes became our best allies once we understood what they really wanted." Lord Commander Zink, the oldest member of the council, leaned forward. "Young human, your species is new to galactic warfare. You do not understand the true horror of the Void Swarm." "You are absolutely right," Ben agreed. "But sometimes fresh eyes can see solutions that experience might miss. What if we are so focused on how things have always been done that we cannot see new ways forward?" After the meeting, Zara walked with Ben through the quiet palace corridors. "You made some powerful enemies today," she told him. "Maybe," Ben said thoughtfully. "But I also planted some seeds. Even if the council rejects my ideas today, they might remember them later when traditional approaches fail." "Is that how humans think about everything?" Zara asked. "Always looking for new possibilities?" Ben stopped walking and took her hands gently.
"Zara, humans failed at almost everything we tried for thousands of years.
We made terrible mistakes, fought pointless wars, and nearly destroyed our own planet. But we learned something important from all that failure." "What did you learn?" "That giving up is the only real defeat. As long as you keep trying new approaches, keep learning from mistakes, and keep believing that tomorrow can be better than today, then eventually you find a way forward." Looking into his earnest brown eyes, Zara finally understood why the galaxy's military experts could not explain human victories. They were not looking for the right thing. Human strength was not about superior weapons or tactics. It was about refusing to accept that any problem was truly unsolvable. For the first time since childhood, Princess Zara began to believe that perhaps the future could be brighter than. The emergency alarm echoed through the crystal corridors of the Valorian Palace, a sound that had not been heard for over 50 years. Princess Zara ran alongside Ben toward the war room, their footsteps creating a rhythm of urgency against the polished floors. Inside the command center, holographic displays showed the terrible news. The border world of Nexus 7 was under attack by the Void Swarm, and the defense fleet was being destroyed faster than anyone thought possible. "How many people live on Nexus 7? Ben asked as they entered the chaotic room. 12 million civilians, General Thane replied grimly, his silver skin pale with stress, plus another 3 million military personnel and their families. Emperor Caney stood at the center of the room, his tall frame rigid with tension. Around him, military advisors spoke in urgent whispers while technicians updated the battle displays every few seconds. What are our options? The Emperor asked. Admiral Cora stepped forward, her expression grave. Your Majesty, we must face reality. Nexus 7 cannot be saved. The Void Swarm has deployed 3 times more ships than we expected. If we send our main fleet to help, we will lose those ships as well. You suggest we abandon 15 million people? Zara asked, unable to keep the shock from her voice. I suggest we save the billions who live in our core systems. Admiral Cora replied firmly. This is military logic, Your Highness. We cannot risk the entire empire for one world. Ben had been studying the tactical displays while the others argued. Now he raised his hand. What if there was a way to save both Nexus 7 and protect the core worlds? General Thane turned to him with barely hidden irritation. Prince Ben, this is not the time for human optimism. We need realistic solutions. This is realistic, Ben insisted, moving to the main display. Look at the Void Swarm formation. They are attacking in a straight line, consuming everything in their path. But what if we could make them change direction? The Void Swarm has never changed direction, Admiral Cora stated. They move forward until everything in their path is consumed. Ben pointed to a section of space near Nexus 7. There is a pulsar here, only 2 light hours away. Pulsars emit massive amounts of energy. What if we could somehow make the pulsar look more attractive to them than the planet? Lord Commander Zink laughed harshly. Young human, you speak of moving celestial objects as if they were toys. Not moving, Ben said patiently. Redirecting. If we could create an energy signature that mimics what the Void Swarm feeds on, but much larger than what Nexus 7 provides, they might choose the easier target. The room fell silent as military minds processed this idea. Finally, General Thane spoke. Even if such a thing were possible, it would require sending ships directly into the battle zone to set up the energy generators. Those ships would be destroyed. Not if they move fast enough, Ben said. Human ships are smaller and more maneuverable than Valorian vessels. We could get in, set up the generators, and get out before the Void Swarm notices. Absolutely not, Admiral Cora declared. This plan is suicide. We would be throwing away our human allies for a desperate gamble that probably will not work. Emperor Caney had been listening carefully. What do you think, Princess Zara? All eyes turned to her, and Zara felt the weight of 15 million lives in her answer. 3 weeks ago, she would have agreed with the admirals. Traditional Valorian thinking said that losing one world to save many was logical and necessary. But 3 weeks ago, she had not yet learned about human persistence and creativity. I think, she said slowly, that Ben is right. We should try to save everyone. The reaction was immediate. Lord Commander Zink stood up angrily. Your Highness, this human has filled your mind with dangerous ideas. You are thinking with emotion instead of logic. No, Zara replied firmly. I am thinking with hope instead of fear. General Thane stepped closer to the Emperor. Your Majesty, we cannot make military decisions based on untested human theories. The risk is too great. Emperor Caney looked at his daughter, then at Ben, then at the display showing Nexus 7 under attack. Explain the plan in detail, he commanded. For the next hour, Ben worked with human engineers to outline exactly how the rescue mission would work. They would need to coordinate Valorian heavy ships with human fast attack vessels, something that had never been attempted before. The timing must be perfect, Ben explained. Valorian ships will engage the Void Swarm directly, drawing their attention. Meanwhile, human ships will race to the pulsar and set up energy amplifiers that will make it shine 10 times brighter in frequencies that the Void Swarm prefers. And if the amplifiers fail? Admiral Cora asked. Then we fall back to your original plan, Ben admitted. But we will have tried to save everyone instead of accepting defeat before the battle begins. Zara watched her father consider the options. She could see him weighing traditional military wisdom against the possibility that humans might see solutions that others missed. The human approach saved them from the Void Swarm twice. Already, she said quietly. Maybe their methods work because they refuse to accept that some battles cannot be won. Lord Commander Zink shook his head. Your Highness, you are being manipulated by alien ideas that will destroy Valorian military tradition. Our military tradition, Zara replied with growing confidence, is to protect Valorian people. All Valorian people. If human ideas can help us do that better, then we should learn from them. Emperor Caney studied the tactical displays one final time. The Void Swarm was getting closer to Nexus 7 with every passing minute. Soon any rescue attempt would become impossible. We will try the human plan, he decided, but if it begins to fail, we will immediately retreat to protect the core worlds. As alarms sounded and both human and Valorian ships prepared for launch, Zara took Ben's hand. I hope you're right about this, she whispered. So do I, Ben replied honestly. But even if we fail, we will know we tried everything possible. Sometimes that makes all the difference. Watching the mixed fleet depart for Nexus 7, Zara realized that her marriage had changed more than just her personal life. It had begun to change how an entire empire thought about solving impossible problems. The command center of the Valorian flagship buzzed with nervous energy as the combined human-Valorian fleet approached Nexus 7. On the main screen, the void swarm looked like a dark cloud eating everything in its path, leaving only empty space where a thriving world had existed moments before. Princess Zara stood beside Emperor Caney, watching her husband Ben coordinate the most complex rescue operation in galactic history. Human voices mixed with Valorian ones as crews from both species worked together for the first time. Human Fast Attack Squadron, you are go for pulsar approach. Ben spoke into his communication device. Remember, you have exactly 18 minutes to set up the energy amplifiers before the void swarm notices the new signal. Copy that. Prince Ben, came the reply from Captain Torres leading the human ships. We will not let Nexus 7 down. On another channel, General Thane commanded the Valorian heavy cruisers. All ships prepare to engage the void swarm directly. Our job is to keep their attention while the humans work. Zara watched the tactical display as dozens of ships moved into position. The plan looked impossible even on paper, requiring split-second timing and perfect coordination between two species that had never fought together before. Energy signature from Nexus 7 is weakening, reported the sensor officer. The void swarm has consumed 60% of the planet's surface. Ben closed his eyes for a moment, and Zara knew he was thinking about the millions of people still fighting for survival on that dying world. When he opened them again, his expression showed the determination she had learned to admire. All units, begin operation, he commanded. The Valorian cruisers opened fire with weapons that turned space itself into sheets of brilliant energy. Their massive ships moved with the grace of dancers, drawing the void swarm's attention away from the planet's surface. Meanwhile, the human ships darted toward the nearby pulsar like silver arrows. Their smaller vessels could not match Valorian firepower, but they moved with an agility that amazed everyone watching. Human squadron has reached the pulsar, Captain Torres reported. Beginning deployment of energy amplifiers. Zara held her breath as she watched the tiny human ships work around the massive celestial object. Pulsars were among the most dangerous phenomena in space, spinning neutron stars that could tear apart anything that came too close. Valorian fleet, we need more time, Ben said into his communicator. Can you keep the void swarm busy for another 10 minutes? We are taking heavy damage, General Thane replied, his voice strained. But we will hold position. On the screen, Zara could see Valorian ships being destroyed by the void swarm's terrible weapons. Each lost vessel meant hundreds of crew members who would never return home to their families. First amplifier is online, Captain Torres announced, energy output increasing by 300%. The pulsar began to glow brighter, sending waves of energy across space in frequencies that the void swarm seemed to find irresistible. Slowly, the dark cloud of creatures began to shift direction. It is working, breathed Emperor Caney. They are turning toward the pulsar. But the celebration was premature. The void swarm was moving too slowly, and human ships were running out of time to escape the pulsar's deadly radiation field. Captain Torres, you need to evacuate immediately, Ben ordered. The radiation will kill you in another 2 minutes. Negative, Prince Ben, Torres replied calmly. We need 3 more minutes to activate the final amplifier. Without it, the energy signature will not be strong enough to pull the entire swarm away from Nexus 7. Zara saw Ben's hands clench into fists. She knew he was facing the nightmare of every commander, asking people to die for the mission. There has to be another way, he said desperately. Sometimes there is not, Zara said softly, placing her hand on his shoulder. Sometimes the best choice is still a terrible choice. Ben looked at her with pain in his eyes, then spoke into the communicator. Captain Torres, the decision is yours. We will not order you to stay. Thank you, sir, Torres replied. But we came here to save 15 million people. We are not leaving until the job is done. The next 3 minutes felt like hours. On the screen, they watched human ships continuing to work even as radiation levels climbed to lethal ranges. One by one, the small vessels began to lose power as their crews succumbed to radiation poisoning. Final amplifier activated, Torres announced, his voice weak but triumphant. Energy output at maximum. The Void Swarm should now find the pulsar much more attractive than Nexus 7. As if responding to his words, the entire Void Swarm suddenly changed direction, racing toward the pulsar with hungry enthusiasm. The dark cloud that had been consuming Nexus 7 abandoned the planet completely, drawn by the promise of far greater energy. Human squadron? Report status, Ben called out. Silence answered him. The rescue ships that had saved 15 million lives had paid the ultimate price. Captain Torres and his crews would never see their families again. Emperor Caney placed a hand on Ben's shoulder. Their sacrifice will be remembered throughout the Empire, he said solemnly. They died as heroes. Ben nodded, unable to speak for a moment. When he found his voice again, it was thick with emotion. They died believing that every life is worth saving, no matter the cost. Over the following weeks, as Nexus 7 was rebuilt and the survivors honored their rescuers, something remarkable happened. Valorian and human crews began working together on every project. They discovered that combining Valorian resources with human creativity produced results neither species had imagined possible. Zara and Ben established new protocols for cooperation between their peoples, creating joint research teams and cultural exchange programs. What had begun as a marriage of political necessity had become a true partnership that made both civilizations stronger. 1 month after the rescue, Zara and Ben stood together on the palace balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. The same nebula that had worried her on the night before their wedding now seemed beautiful and full of possibilities. Do you regret it? She asked quietly. Leaving your world to marry a stranger? Ben took her hand, no longer the formal gesture of a diplomatic arrangement, but the natural action of someone who truly cared. I came here expecting to fulfill a duty, he said with a smile. Instead, I found something I never thought possible. What did you find? I found that love really can conquer worlds, he replied. Not through force or politics, but by showing people that when we work together, we can solve problems that seemed impossible. As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Princess Zara realized that her arranged marriage had given her something far more valuable than political alliance. It had given her a partner who saw the universe not as a collection of problems to be endured, but as an endless source of possibilities waiting to be discovered. Together, they would help build a future where human hope and Valorian wisdom could protect the galaxy from any threat, no matter how dark or hungry it might be.